welcome to Tell Us Something. Thanks for being here. Some housekeeping stuff will be coming up here in just a second. This event is being recorded by the Missoula Community Access Television as a grant provided to Tell Us Something from NCAP. Tell Us Something acknowledges that this land where Ogren Park now stands is the ancestral territory of the Salish and Kalispel peoples who have stewarded it for generations. Summertime is traditionally the prime time for indigenous peoples to gather various berries and roots that are in season. While the bitter roots are already harvested, now is the time for processing and storing any remaining bitter root that have been gathered. Another staple, camas bulbs, are being dug and prepared for storage. Huckleberries, service berries, and choke cherries are ripening and being harvested for immediate consumption and for drying to preserve in winter. We take this moment to honor its land and the native people and the stories that they share with us. To honor them, you can support the ongoing efforts of the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes by learning about their cultural initiatives and advocating for indigenous rights. More information can be found at kskt.org. I don't know if you've noticed, but it's warm. There are 12 drinking fountain stations. Remember to hydrate, please. If you bring it in, please take it with you. I'd love to make this a leave no trace event so that the staff isn't having to pick up peanut shells and all that other stuff. I know they won't be picking up cigarette butts because this is a non-smoking venue and a non-vaping venue, and it also is a no re-entry venue. So if you go outside to smoke, then you're not coming back in. The other thing is, please do not try to get over chairs. Don't step over the chairs. We had a person break a hip the other day. I'm not making this up. It may seem safe, and I got this, but it's not safe. So please use the steps. Restrooms on both sides of where the concessions are. When you entered, you were presented with the opportunity to submit your own lost and found story anonymously. You can do that and then turn them in at either side of the concession stand. There's a little brown box. You can turn those in, and then right after intermission, we'll be reading those, some of them, from what is the stage here. Tell Us Something stories sometimes have adult themes. Storytellers sometimes use adult language. Thank you for choosing to join us this evening, and I know that you have many options regarding how to spend your time and money. I am grateful that you have chosen to be here now. We also welcome a handful of Missoula nonprofits tonight. Thank you for all of the work that you do. Tell Us Something wants as many people as possible to be able to witness for their community as storytellers stand exercising their First Amendment right of free speech. We do not want price to be a barrier to entry. And to that end, we also have a stewardship program that provides limited free tickets at each event to nonprofits and others who may otherwise be unable to afford to come to a cultural event like this. You can learn more about our stewardship program at tellussomething.org. Generous funding tonight is provided by the Greater Montana Foundation, encouraging communication on issues, trends, and values of importance to Montanans. We are so grateful to the Greater Montana Foundation for their support to make tonight possible. Here's what you'll experience tonight. We have 8 storytellers. They each have 10 minutes to share their true personal story from memory on the theme of lost and found. I mentioned that sometimes we have adult stories with adult themes, and storytellers sometimes use adult language, so please take care of yourself. After the first 4 storytellers, we have an intermission break, And then when we come back, we'll have audience participation and the next 4 storytellers. One of the things I really like to do is get grounded with everybody. So together, let's try this. We're going to take 3 deep breaths together. And on the 3rd exhale, I want you to hum. Try it. Ready? Ready? 1, 2, 3. It is important to actively listen to one another, join together, and support one another by sharing stories. When we do this, we can better connect with our own individual stories, with each other, and with our community. This is your community. These are your stories. The stories you hear at each Tell Us Something are by and for members of our community. You can do this too. You can share your stories. Tell Us Something provides storytelling workshops for storytellers. Storytellers are paid for their art. We welcome you to pitch your stories. The next event will be in October at the Denison. I'm not sure what the theme is yet, so subscribe to the newsletter and pay attention to our social media accounts for more information on that. Our storytellers tonight have worked very hard to bring you their stories. Some of them have traveled miles to get here, from Butte and Bozeman. Please give them the respect that they deserve by actively listening to them. Can we do that? Please silence your cell phones and other mobile devices. You came to listen. Let the listening begin. Remember that Tell Us Something storytellers sometimes share adult stories and sometimes use adult language. Please take care of yourselves. Our first storyteller tonight is Hammy. Hammy is thrilled to be sharing his story tonight. He works in occupational safety, health, and risk management. He is the founder and creative director of Queer Butte Arts and Culture, a new group celebrating local queer art, queer culture, and local queer history. Last year, he was named one of Southwest Montana's 20 under 40. And this year, he was honored as the Young Professional of the Year by the Butte Local Development Corporation. He is a homosexual, and he lives in Butte with his partner Clayton, also a homosexual. Hammy is passionate about harm reduction, ending stigma, and walking on his hands. Above all, Hammy believes storytelling can save lives, and he's thrilled to be here tonight to share his story. Please welcome Hammy.
Hello, everyone. My name's Hammy, and before I begin, I need to tell everyone that I just grew up loving my family. Me, my mom, my brother, my sister, my dad, we were all so very close. Also, I never really heard my parents fighting at all, which was pretty cool. They would always fight about religion, though. You see, my dad was Roman Catholic, and my mom's a Jehovah's Witness. And their son had a secret. So I always knew that I always knew that one day I was going to make this decision. And I tried, I prayed, I did the baptism, I did the conversion therapy. And when I was 27 years old, I finally realized I couldn't do it anymore. So I kind of came out. I started downloading the dating apps. I started dating, and I met this boy, this beautiful man in Indiana, and I decided to get married. Did someone go, woo, Indiana? Yeah. Don't hear that often. So he just completely swept me up, and I came out, and sure enough, my church gave me that phone call, and they excommunicated me, and my mom, my brother, my sister, my cousins, my friends, everyone, dead. That's it. I believe the church said they handed me over to Satan. And I'm like, that is a little dramatic. I'm the gay one. Easy there, Satan. But anyways, we were married for 5 years. We had a good relationship. And until one day he decided that he didn't want to be married anymore. And so I thought, well, I left my family to marry you, and you changed your mind, and that's okay. But what am I going to do? I knew I wasn't staying in Indiana. So I wanted to go home. Everything in my body told me, I gotta go home. I have to go home. And I knew that if I went home, I would get sucked into the church again, and I knew I would just end up killing myself because I would be conflicted. So I decided to do one of those, eat, pray, love things and just go find myself. But I really don't like Europe, so I just came to Montana instead. So I got a job at Yellowstone and Big Sky, and I did all those kind of things of working seasonal jobs. And I finally decided what I wanted to do more than anything was work in public health. I was in first responder and then in occupational health, and now I was in public health. So I got accepted back into a public health program online, and I got a job at the Gallatin County Health Department. And so my very first day, right? Well, let me actually back up just a minute. After I came off the mountain, the girl was in heat. Let me tell you, I was divorced. I was in a new city. I was feeling good about myself. The Grindr notifications were rolling in. So I had a lot of fun that first weekend. Now, that morning on my first day at the health department, I woke up and I went to go take a piss, and I thought, shit, it started burning. I said, this can't be good. Maybe I'm just dehydrated. So I hop in the shower, and I look down, and this discharge is coming out. Well, you know what? We don't need to get too graphic, but I think I knew exactly what it was. That was the first thought, shit, I have gonorrhea. The second immediate thought was the place I need to go to treat this gonorrhea is my first day at the health department. I thought, oh my God, this is gonna suck. So I go to I get dressed. For some reason, I decided to put on white underwear. To this day, I don't understand why I chose white, but I loaded up on underwear and I headed into work. And I thought, I don't know what I'm going to tell them. I don't know if I'm going to just keep it kind of quiet. But then they're all going to know. They're going to do the contact tracing. So I met the health officer, and she says, hello, James, welcome. My real name's James. She says, hello, James, welcome. And I said, hello, and I have gonorrhea, and I'm going to have to talk to someone. And she says, okay, let's get your boss, who's the communicable disease manager. And I'm like, of course, that makes total sense. So I tell her, I'm like, hey, and then I kind of do it like, by that point, I kind of go on like this one-man show where I'm just telling everybody. Like, I got the first two out. So like epidemiologist, you knew, front desk reception, I was letting her know. I just had to own that story. So they arrange they do the follow-up and contact tracing at the health department, but they do actually the testing at a different party. So I go down, I go get tested. And the doctor comes in, I'm like, I have gonorrhea. And she's like, okay. So I pull down my pants, and then I look down, and she looks down, and we both notice a bump. Now, this was August 2022. If anyone in public health knows what was happening around August 20, yes, there it is. Monkeypox, Mpox. She looks, I look, she says, I'll be right back. Leaves the room. She comes back in looking like Monsters, Inc. It was head to toe, PPE, the mask, the shield, the gloves. The runway category was PPE, and she crushed it. So she's coming in, and so she like takes, and she starts slicing it. And I've only been at, yes, exactly. Oh, because I've only been in one public health class my first semester and 3 days at the health department. And inside I knew, I'm pretty sure it's a swab, but I'm not going to tell you like, hey, by the way, doctor, I'm new to public health. This is what to do. So she cuts it, and as she cuts it, there's like gonorrhea dripping out of my penis. It is a whole, hello, yes. There is a whole, it's a whole production. So now I gotta call my boss on my way home and be like, hey, they think it might be Mpox and I have to quarantine. So do you guys have like a remote or a computer, yeah, I can pick up? They were very great. The health department, I'll tell you, when they say these were all strangers, and you have to rely on the compassion and kindness of strangers. They were all absolutely amazing, and they just reaffirmed my life and the people in Butte that queer people were being taken care of because there was no stigma, there was no judgment. They were just right to the facts. So I get a phone call a couple days later. It's negative. For Mpox, gonorrhea, we all knew, yes. That was, we had that one coming. So we get there, and she's, so I go back in, and they say, okay, you got to do your follow-up test. So I do my follow-up test, and they call me back. They say, everything's negative. We just wanted you to come back in one last time for a shot of penicillin. I thought, okay, that's fine. Give me a shot of penicillin. I wait a couple weeks. I go on another date. Now, I have to go to Butte for this date. I go to Butte, first time. I think it's really fun here. I go have a nice, beautiful morning with Clayton, his name was, a wonderful man. We're just having some coffee, and he says, we'd like to get lunch. And I said, yeah, I just want to let you know I'm allergic to seafood. And he says, okay, well, we're in Butte, so relax. And then I said, are you allergic to anything? He says, just penicillin. And I said, okay, well, we can't have sex after lunch because I might give you penicillin. I had gonorrhea, and it wasn't, but then thought it was monkeypox, but it wasn't that, but it was gonorrhea, actually. So if I can transmit it, I'm only in my, third week of public health right now, so I don't really know how all of this works. He said, I just want to buy you lunch. So, good guy. So that's thinking about that now. Getting lost, getting found. Was I lost when I came out here? I think a little bit, and I think we're always a little bit lost, right? Because that's what makes life kind of exciting. And have I been found? Well, I found a really good therapist. Thank God for her. I found a community, a family, my partner, Clayton. He stayed with me, by the way. Great guy. By the way, did I just hear, oh? By the way, every interaction since then is always that of me being like, I have a wild story, and him being like, sure. So it's like the perfect relationship. And I found a great community in Butte. It's such a wonderful town. Thank you to Missoula. Butte's able to hang a pride flag. We got that passed, so thank you guys. Thank you, Missoula, for that. But in conclusion of this story, I try to talk openly about this. I don't want us to feel like we ever have to hold in that shame, that darkness, because I know what that darkness does. When we bring that darkness to the light in front of strangers, just sharing our stories, we're able to own that, right? So thank you guys so much for having me here. I appreciate it, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of this time. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Sammy. One thing I forgot to tell you about what happens tonight, and we're learning, is that I have a timekeeper who has been with us since kind of the beginning. Marissa is awesome, but we have a new variable. It used to be a gong that she would hit at the 9-minute mark, and that doesn't mean get off the stage. That means the storyteller, if they're not paying attention to the time or they can't see it because it's the sun, it's Marissa just saying, hey, you've got a minute left. What does that sound like?
A gentle reminder?
Yeah.
Oh.
So if you hear that, it's just Marissa going, hey, storyteller, you're almost out of time. So that's what that is. I forgot to mention that. Thank you so much, Hammy. And the other thing that's new tonight is usually we have a mic stand, but the girth of this is too big for the mic stand that I have. So that's why we're holding it. And it should be this close to your mouth, storyteller. So our next storyteller said, I thought we were going to go under the radar. You don't announce the storytellers, but so many people are coming up to me and telling me, hey, I heard you're telling a story. So she needs a little love from you all. She's very excited to be here. Katie Van Dorn. is originally from La Jolla, California. Katie studied exercise physiology. Katie studied exercise physiology at the University of Montana. She is passionate about the outdoors and is a compassionate real estate agent who has been caring for home buyers and sellers alike in Missoula for over 20 years. Katie loves hiking, cross-country skiing, swimming, gardening, and cooking. You may have heard her Freeforms show on Montana Public Radio, where she is a rotating host and producer of Thursday Freeforms. Please welcome Katie Van Dorn.
Wow. The only time I hold a mic like this is when I am in a room all by myself. So now I've got to see all these faces. Anyway, well, good evening, everybody. Have you ever heard the joke about the lost dog with 3 legs, blind in his left eye, missing an ear, and no tail? Well, that dog answers to the name of Lucky. And my brother used to say that I was that dog named Lucky. And the reason for that is it began at birth. I was born with a dislocated hip, and I was a cesarean baby. So either the doctor pulled too hard, or somehow they didn't check my hip at birth. So around age 2, my parents finally discovered that I had a dislocated hip when I fell and couldn't get up. And so I was braced, just tucked in and kept in a brace, and I would be standing in the yard, in the patio, just spread eagle like this, with my brother and sister running all around me, and a little tiny dog named Clyde would just knock me over, flat on my back. And so anyway, that actually did wonders for me. It sent me on my way, and because I grew up in La Jolla, as Mark said, I was able to swim and body surf and hike and run and all that. My childhood wasn't affected, but at high school, I started to have a lot of hip pain again, and so I went to the orthopedic surgeon, and he said, well, you need a pelvic osteotomy. In other words, a total restructuring of my right hip. And basically, it just rotates your acetabulum, your socket, straight down instead of down and out. And that actually 6 weeks in a body cast, then 7 months on crutches. And the body cast was like my parents had to have a baby all over again. They had to come give me the bedpan and water and food and everything. And I was not a happy baby. And so anyway, I got through that, and it was like I felt like the lucky dog. It was pretty miraculous. I was able to run. I started school at the University of California, Davis, and I was able to run a half marathon, and I just really got into running, and I also got into swimming. I used to swim in the ocean, but I started swimming in a pool with a master's program, and the coach there asked me if I wanted to do a race from Lanai to Maui in Hawaii, swimming across the channel. And so I did that, and it was a pretty neat experience with huge swells, and some of the swimmers were seasick because the boat had to go as slow as the swimmer. But I did it, and it just fueled my love of adventure and my desire for more. And soon thereafter, I was invited to cook at a guest ranch in the Selway Bitterroot Wilderness. And that was my introduction to Montana. And so I went back and cooked for 5 summers. I loved it. I would run along the river's edge and jump into big pools. And so for 5 years, I alternated summers in the Selway and winters cooking at a restaurant at the top of Aspen or Snowmass Mountain. And then I decided, okay, I need a real job. So I went back to school in exercise physiology and learned about how exercise and nutrition and all sorts of things factor into staying healthy. And but then soon after I graduated got my master's, once again my hip was bothering me. So now I was facing surgery number 3, and this was from the femoral side instead of the pelvic side. And I probably should have figured it out, but I didn't. And I came out of surgery with my right leg 1.5 inches shorter than my left. And I was PO'd, to say the least. And the doctor said, well, that's the way it has to be. So it just was. So I just learned to use poles for hiking, and I put lifts in and outside of my shoe. And I got a lot of body work, and my name used to be Katie Bodywork Van Dorn. And to this day, I live by that principle. But I met my husband around that time, and he also loved hiking. Ray, he's up there. And so we did a lot of adventures that involved hiking, Trapper Peak, Lolo Peak, etc. And if I got sore, he would give me a piggyback and just bounce my hips around until I was good to go again. And so anyway, that went on. And then around 2001, when I was 45 years old, I decided to have a hip replacement. And to tell you the truth, that was a very lucky experience, because to this day, I still have that hip, and it works wonderfully. I might have a funky gait, but it still works. And so because of that good surgery, we decided to do this ski trip in Finland, from Russia to Sweden. And we skied about 40 to 50 miles a day for 7 days. And that, again, was quite an adventure. And what I realized with both swimming and skiing is that they're very rhythmical. And so if you just put a piece of music like Pachelbel's Canon in your head, you can just get into the flow. And so I did a lot of skiing. And then because of this funky gait, I found myself needing knees, 2 of them, in 2014. And so I went back and I had knee surgery. And again, that was so fortunate. It just flowed so well. And I still to this day have the knees and the hip, and they both do really well. But what happened a few years later was that I started to have foot pain, left foot pain, and I consulted doctors. After trying ibuprofen and tons of steroid shots, I kept pushing myself, and finally the doctor said, you know what, your foot talus bone, which is your landing pad, has collapsed, and your only option is amputation. Cut that off. And I said, I'm going to cut my head off before I cut any foot off. And I meant it. And and this was the first time that there wasn't a solution. There was always solutions to all these things. This is the first time when I thought, okay, you've got to figure this one out for yourself. And Henry David Thoreau once said that not until we are lost can we begin to find ourselves. So I sought out a lot of alternative medicine. I got stem cells and prolotherapy and platelet-rich plasma, and I sought it all out to try to help the foot, at least structurally. And then my mom happened to pass away in the middle of all this, so I had time to just go inward and think about, okay, what have I done wrong here? Maybe I've been not a nice person, because I lost my SOLE, but I felt like I needed my SOUL saved. And so I tried to do a lot of meditation and studying neuroscience and why, how meditation can help that. And I studied energy medicine, and I studied restorative yoga, and I just went deep for 3 years. I just kind of hid out, and all my friends up there were with me when, Ray would put on his ski clothes or his running shoes and go to go out and exercise, and I would start crying. And I just would always be in tears. And finally, after a lot of work, and internally and a lot of outside work, little by little, my foot started to be a little less blue, and so did I, and less swollen. And gradually, I was able to do more and more. First, I could walk without the brace. I had an AFO brace on my foot. And then I could walk a little bit longer. And then I could double pull cross-country skiing. And finally, in 2022, I hiked to top of Jumbo for the first time. And I just wept and with joy and gratitude. And ever since then, I really thought, okay, you've got to be grateful for this body, because it's pieced together, lots of replaced parts, and so you've got to take good care of it and honor it. And when it doesn't want to do something, let go. Just let it go. And so I want to summarize my story, my lost and found story, with a little verse from one of my favorite musicians, Leonard Cohen, and the song is called Anthem. He says, "Ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything, and that's how the light gets in." Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Oh, we're getting shade out here on the stage. Our next storyteller is Karna Sundby. Karna Sundby's journey of self-discovery has led her to explore various paths in life, from teaching meditation to a successful career in corporate sales. What has always driven her most is the desire to make a difference. Often the toughest times in life are the ones which break us open and forge within us a deep well of compassion. Her story tonight is about one of those times when a terrible tragedy led to a precious gift. Know that Karna's story speaks frankly about suicide. Please welcome Karna Sundby.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Come with me to Seattle. It's after work, and I'm on an escalator headed up to a restaurant. I'm feeling anxious and wondering, why am I doing this? I get to the top, and sitting on a couch is a very handsome man, eyeing the escalator. He stands up, flashes me a big smile, has perfect teeth. And maybe this blind date isn't such a bad idea after all. We sit in the bar for hours, telling stories about our families, our sales careers, his love of sailing, my passion for skydiving, and all of our bizarre blind dates. Later, we would agree that it seemed like a reunion, like we already knew each other, maybe from some other time. His name was Ed, and his gentle spirit won my heart. We spent almost every weekend on his sailboat, which was so relaxing and so exhilarating when you're keeled over and the spinnaker's out and you're slicing through the swales. And then there's nothing so tranquil as being lulled to sleep by waves slapping against the hull of a gently rocking boat. Eventually, we moved into a a house on the Puget Sound. And it was summer in Seattle. We were so happy. Life was so good. As I got to know him over the next couple years, I felt we had the happiest relationship of anybody that I knew. He was more quiet with other people than he was with me, and so I started thinking of him as the strong, silent type. We were both in sales, and I realized that he never should have been. There was just too much pressure, too many quotas, too much selling. And so I wish that he had had some different kind of career. We never had an argument. I never saw him upset or depressed until one November night. And then when I asked him what was wrong, he said it was his job. And I said, well, Ed, you can find a different job. But I'd never seen him despondent like this, and I didn't know how to support him. So I just thought, well, I'll just let it be, let him watch Monday Night Football, and we'll talk about this more tomorrow. But for us, there would be no tomorrow. I was 42 years old, living a charmed life with the man of my dreams. Those dreams died the next day when I came home from work and found him dead. he had chosen to end his life. When I found his dead body, I just started screaming and ran into the house, grabbed the phone, and started dialing my parents in Illinois. When I realized I can't just keep screaming when they answer the phone, and I can't stop, I hung up. Just then, my neighbor shouted, "I called 911," and whoosh, all of my freaking out parts just came rushing back together, and I thought, help is on the way. Maybe he's not dead. Maybe they can save him. The fire truck came very quickly and got him out of the car. We're trying to resuscitate him on the driveway. It was so unbelievable. I ran into the house to get a pillow for his head. I remember standing against this post, just praying out loud. I swear I could hear the sound of my life shattering on the concrete when I realized he was gone. I now know that he'd been fired from that job for not making his sales goal. And later I would find a box of mail that he didn't want me to see. Debts, a recent bill from the IRS with 6 years of unpaid taxes. The strong, silent type with secrets that I would never find answers for. The next year was hell, full of dark emotions. Sorrow, despair, hopelessness, and I needed community to heal. So I went to visit some dear girlfriends in the LA area and happened to be there when the Northridge earthquake happened. We were talking until late into the night when suddenly the earth just started quaking. The walls were shuddering, shirking violently back and forth, and it was dark as a tomb, and there was this dead silence except for my friends shouting, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" They were diving for door jambs and hiding under furniture. I was laying on the ground, spread eagle, in front of a plate glass window that went from the floor to the ceiling, hoping that it would shatter and kill me. And I made an instant decision that if it broke and didn't kill me, I'd take a shard of glass and slit my jugular vein, and no one would know that I had done it. That's how much I didn't want to be here. I wished that I could die, but I knew the pain of suicide. There was just this constant ache, this empty, endless hole that nothing could fill. And there were the nightmares. That first year, it was the support of family, friends, grief counseling, and a spiritual connection that got me through the tough times. I wanted to be free of the bad dreams, so I went to a professional. That first session was pretty scary because she wanted to take me back into the garage, the source of the site of the bad dreams, where I would wake up in a cold, sweaty panic, sometimes screaming. But what she said made sense, that I was reliving it because that's the way my brain had recorded it, and that we needed to rewire my brain. So she taught me how to disassociate in a healthy way from the event so that I could observe it instead of live it. After 2 sessions, I never had a nightmare again. After a few more sessions, I was blown away at how much better I was feeling. No longer merely surviving, I was thriving. The modality was called NLP, which stands for Neuro Linguistic Programming. And I decided I want to help people heal from their trauma. So I went to school, became a master practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming. And when I first started working with clients, it was the most fulfilling thing I ever experienced in my life. It was such a gift. And there were other gifts that came from this tragedy. The gift of compassion. When I felt such deep pain, it led me to such deep compassion for human suffering. I don't know if I could have become someone who cares so much what people go through if I hadn't gone through so much myself. That was such a gift. And another gift that I received was learning how to forgive. If I hadn't been able to forgive the people that I wanted to blame, I think I'd still be haunted by this tragedy, stuck forever in the past, maybe even using it as an excuse for why I couldn't be happy or successful in life. But I like what Nelson Mandela says about forgiveness. To stay in a state of non-forgiveness is like me drinking poison, expecting the other guy to die. I didn't want to drink the poison, so I became someone who can forgive easily, and that is a great gift. Another gift that I received was I learned how to feel all my feelings, no matter how dark they were, without being afraid of feeling them. I learned the truth of grieving, which is this: to heal, you must feel. When Ed first died, I never thought I'd be happy again. And I sure never thought I'd fall in love. But maybe it's because I was willing to so deeply feel that I was able to truly heal my broken heart and create new dreams. I've been with my amazing husband, Kirk, now for 24 years. Actually, it'll be 24 years on July 7th. And I would need my whole 10 minutes up here to tell you what a wonderful man he is. I'm going to start crying. So communicative, so reliable, so passionate about life, and handsome with perfect teeth. When I first met Kirk, I realized that for me, some of the grief work was only going to be completed when I was in a relationship again, and he was willing to walk that path with me, bringing us so close, able to talk about everything. I created new dreams with him, like moving back to Missoula, where I went to college. Our life is so good, and I'm so grateful that I didn't die in that earthquake, that I lived to find this joy. And I love my work. I love to help people transform. And when I help somebody heal their trauma, their depression, their PTSD, the really deep stuff, it means the world to me. I feel like I'm doing the work that I meant to do. Do I think about Ed very much? Not so much. When there's some anniversary, yes. When I hear of another suicide, yes. But when I heard that the theme tonight was lost and found, I thought maybe I would like to tell my story. I lost so much. I lost the man I loved. I lost my hopes. I lost my dreams. And I found so much. I found my passion. I found meaningful work. I found my life's calling. And maybe I was destined to work with people to help them heal their trauma. And maybe I wouldn't have found my destiny without this tragedy. So the whole experience has brought me to develop kind of a new core belief in life, which is that when the really tough times happen, maybe there's a gift in there somewhere. And if we can just keep our eyes and our ears and our hearts open, maybe somehow we'll be guided to find a gift amidst the pain. Thank you.
Thank you, Karna. Next, we have Kara Adolfson. Kara is a Montanan community member, therapist, and storyteller who finds joy in the arts, the outdoors, and bluebird days in Missoula. She believes in the power of vulnerability, humor, and shared experience to bring people together. A lover of language and listening, Kara is committed to fostering connection, whether it is in the counseling room, on a trail, or around the dinner table. Tonight, she is honored to be on the Teleslimming stage, where storytelling becomes a bridge for connection. Please welcome Kara Adolfson.
Hello out there. The first day of my freshman year in college was on the 6-month anniversary of my best friend's death. And I had just come from this small Montana town where all of my day-to-day interactions had shifted from, "Hey, Kara, how's it going?" to, "Hey, Kara, how are you?" And I became so desperate to get away from that I moved as quickly and as early as I possibly could here to the University of Montana campus. And as I arrived in the town that my friend and I had planned to move to together without her, I made a solemn vow to myself that I would tell no one that I was grieving. Not only because I was so tired of these othersome interactions that I had been having, but also because at 18, I really didn't have the words to explain what I was going through. So it became my closest kept secret, and I told no one. I didn't tell my professors, I didn't tell my new bosses, I didn't tell any new peers that I met, I didn't even tell my roommate that I lived in a proverbial shoebox with. It was truly a secret. But the thing about grief is that it tends to show up even when it's uninvited, especially when it's uninvited. And my grief really showed up in my poor academic performance my freshman year. I had a hard time attending my classes, let alone doing anything to pass them. I practically flunked out my very first semester. I lost all of my academic scholarships. And while that was really difficult to hold, for anyone out there who has experienced grief, you can corroborate that one of the more difficult emotions to hold when you're grieving is surprisingly joy. These two seemingly opposite emotions are hard to balance at the same time, and it's something that took me years of practice to master. But one thing during this year that really cracked open this joy for me was I, of course, met a boy. And he really brought that glimmer back into my life. I could tell that he could see through the facade that I was offering, and he was treating me like a normal person. And even so, still, I couldn't tell him about my grief. And as the year continued on and the seasons changed and winter was preparing to give way into spring, there was this horrible date that was approaching, which was the 1-year anniversary of my friend's death. And I could tell pretty quickly that I wasn't going to be able to handle it very well. So I was making plans of how I could kind of cancel the day and pretend that it didn't even happen. And on the night before the 1-year anniversary, I was sitting in my dorm room, premeditating, calling out of work, canceling my classes, shocker, and just hiding away in my room. And that's when I heard a familiar ping on my laptop, a Facebook message, because the year was 2013, and we still Facebook messaged each other to communicate. And so I went over, and it was a message from this boy, and it said, "Hey, what are you doing tomorrow?" I thought, well, nothing. And he said, "How would you feel about coming to one of my classes with me?" I thought, well, that's really bizarre. But what class? And he said, "Just show up. You'll find out when you get there." So I agreed, having no idea what I was agreeing to. The University of Montana offers over 300 different courses, including things like acrobatic trampoline class. So it really could have been anything. But the next morning, instead of hiding away from the world as I had planned, I went out into it. And I went over to the social sciences building on campus, which is a kind of catch-all building for a lot of classes, to meet this boy. I went up to the 3rd floor to a room that I knew was a lecture hall, hoping that I could walk in and blend in with the crowd. But when I opened the door to that room, there was maybe 15 people in that room. There was no blending in. But I went in anyway, and I sat down next to this boy, and I said, "Where am I?" And he said, "Well, this is my art history class." I said, "Okay." And right then the professor says, "Well, class, as you know, today is our big field trip day. So gather your belongings. We're leaving right now." Okay, so I get up with the rest of the class and we leave and we go all the way downstairs in the same building. There are student art exhibits on the first floor, and the class was to go around and just meander around the exhibits and make of them what you will. And this boy, he was beaming, so excited, because at some point over the last several months, I had told him that I love art. But what he doesn't know that's more salient to me on this day is that my friend, she really loved art. And so somehow on the 1-year anniversary, I'm there at an art exhibit. And as we go in, I'm pretty novice to the whole art exhibit scene, so I'm breezing past the artist statements, and I'm really taking like a vibes-based approach to what's in the room. And I walk into the very first exhibit, and the first display is this giant block of ice being melted by sound. And I thought, oh no, I have no idea what this means. But I'm staring at this block of ice, and this boy is staring at me, staring at the block of ice. And I think, you gotta say something brilliant. So I say something to the effect of, well, we're all blocks of ice, and we're all slowly melting. I'm having a rather existential day, mind you. And he loves it, and it encourages me to go authentically through the rest of the exhibit. So we go through serpentine, all of the different art that's on display, until we enter the final room, which is this magnificent display of all of these different hourglass-shaped ceramic sculptures in all different shapes and sizes. There's one that's 4 feet tall. There's some on pedestals like flower vases. There's 100 of them pinned up in a grid system, repeating over and over again. And I tell him how very Warhol that is, or something. And we spend a lot of time in this exhibit. We're really enjoying it. And at the end, there's this huge container of tiny versions of this sculpture that the viewers get to take home. Perfect. We dig through this container. We're reaching to the bottom. We're pulling them up to see how the glaze shines in the light. We're rolling them in our palms to see the texture and the weight. And he finds one that he thinks speaks to him. I find one that speaks to me. We slip them in our pockets and we leave. And as I made my way back to my dorm room, I was overcome with gratitude, how on a day that I had planned to disappear, I had been seen, and really seen. And that night, as I laid down in bed, I took my sculpture and I gave it a big kiss, and I tucked it under my pillow, just warmed by the events from that day. The next morning, I even took it with me to the food zoo for breakfast. And I went to the food zoo, the campus cafeteria, and I sat down with my cereal and my orange juice. And I look over, and there's a copy of the Kaiman, the campus newspaper, sat right there. And on it is a photo of the art exhibit from the day before. Kismet. I'm going to read that. So I drag it over, and I unfold it so that the page drops down, and that's when I see underneath the photo, in rather large writing, University Butt Plug Exhibit is a huge success. And that's when I realized that my sweet sculpture is, in fact, yes. And I let out the biggest belly laugh that I had in a very long time. And it was during that time of tremendous loss for me that I found my sense of humor about life again. Thank you.
Thank you, Kara. Thanks to our media sponsors, MissoulaEvents.net and Missoula Broadcasting Company, including the family of ESPN Radio, the Trail 103.3, Jack FM, and Missoula's source for modern hits, U 104.5. Thanks to our in-kind sponsors, Float Missoula and Joyce of Tile. Learn about Joyce and her work at joyceoftile.com. There she is, right over there. When you patronize these businesses, thank them for their support of live storytelling in Missoula. To truly thrive and continue bringing powerful stories to our community, we rely on additional support. We're committed to sharing these experiences, and we can't do it without you understanding our financial realities and seeking community partnership. To tell you more about how you can help bridge that gap, we have our board member, there she is, Kathy Witkowski. Please welcome Kathy Witkowski.
Wow. Hi, everyone. It's so good to see all of you here on this beautiful summer evening. I had planned to talk about how wonderful Tell Us Something is and how special it is. And as I was sitting there listening to these stories, I realized I don't need to tell you that because you're here and you heard them. So if there's many, many things that I love about Missoula that I think make Missoula really special. And Tell Us Something is definitely way up in the top echelon of that. Maybe you can give a round of applause if you agree. Yeah. So as I said, if you're here and you witness that, you know how special Tell Us Something is. And as Mark described, we pay our storytellers, and we pay our interpreters, and we pay for the venue, and we pay for the recordings. But what Mark, who has run this organization for 14 years, did not mention is that we sometimes don't have the money to pay him. And so it is my privilege to offer you the opportunity to give a little back to Tell Us Something tonight. If you don't have extra money to do that, there is no pressure. You are here. We are happy you are here, and that is your gift. But if you do, and you want to see Tell Us Something remain or become sustainable, and you want to come back to a show and bring others with you to a show so that Tell Us Something continues to be one of your favorite things about Missoula, then you are going to see our lovely volunteers with buckets passing the buckets down your aisle. And if you don't have any cash, there is a QR code. I think it's on the screen there. So if you want to donate with a debit or credit card, you can do so. Again, I am never shy about asking for money for causes that I believe in, because I think it's an opportunity for everyone to support something that they value. So tonight we're hoping to come away with an extra $1,500. I think that seems like it would be doable. I don't know, I think that might be something like an average of, $3 to $5 a person. Some people don't have extra money to give, and we totally respect that and understand that. Maybe some of you have more than that. But please, if you value tonight and future events from Tell Us Something, here's your opportunity to give back. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathy. And while the buckets are being passed, we will start thinking about intermission. After the buckets have had a chance to go around, we'll start intermission for 10 minutes or so. And when we come back, we'll have audience participation. So please do give generously if you can. Thank you. Welcome back. And thank you to everybody who donated during intermission. Thank you so much. I promised you audience participation, and joining me on the stage, so to speak, are Lauren and Aubrey, who are going to read your selections. They each get their own mic. Yeah, I know. It's pretty great. And after that, we'll continue on with the rest of the storytellers.
All right. We moved to La Paz, Bolivia, with a family of four plus a dog and a cat. We left our cat with some new friends, and she promptly ran away in a city of 1.7 million. Lots of stray dogs, no cats. We were just devastated. This was in the early 90s, before Xerox machines had arrived in Bolivia. So we drew 20 pictures of her. She was distinct, no tail, and 27 toes. 6 weeks later, someone saw her flyer, and we were reunited.
Lost my temper at a party, announced I would be walking home myself. Found my temper back when I stormed outside and remembered it was only -4 degrees outside.
I was dating a man in DC. He was in charge of paying dancers at the Kennedy Center. My sister moved into a tiny apartment in NYC. Boyfriend was dealing with a lost check. Dancer never got it. They couldn't find it anywhere. My sister calls 3 months later. The dancer had once lived in the apartment she now lived in, and the check was there. Found.
A friend of my son's was visiting our old log cabin in the Swan Valley. He took off his watch and when he went to bed and set it right on the table next to the bed. In the morning, it was gone. 3 years later, my husband found the watch while deconstructing a wall. It had been deposited there by a bushy-tailed wood rat.
When I was a teen, I skied in my jeans. I had a paper driver's license in my back pocket. I guess it fell out in one of my many falls. It wasn't there at the end of the day. 2 weeks later, a friend of the family said that he had my license. When he stepped on one of the ski runs, he planted his pole, and at the end of the pole was my license. What are the odds?
I lost my relationship with my father when I turned 13. Puberty took over, and for the next 7 years, we were at extreme odds. He saw white, I saw black. Then, at 20, I came home from fighting fires, and he asked me to fell a tree in our woods. I told him to get the chainsaw, and he put a dime out where he wanted the crown of the tree to land. I cut, he pushed, and together we dropped it. Bullseye! High five and a beer together, and I found my relationship again with my father. And it grew stronger until his last breath.
We paddled into the takeout of a remote river trip in Utah, ready to start the drive home to Missoula in time for work the next day. But the keys were gone, and rat footprints were everywhere. We hitchhiked to Moab. My friend's mom overnight mailed me the spare key, and I posted on Instagram looking for a ride. An old Tinder flame, responded and picked us up in a windowless white van. He was super nice. We recovered the car, and a few days later, we got a call from someone who found our key in a rat hole with a bunch of shiny things.
Nearly 30 years ago, I had a photography show in Hamilton, Montana, and sold a longtime favorite photo of Venice, only to discover that I had lost the negative. Last summer, I was at a dinner party and a friend there told me she had the photo. Her parents had bought the photo and since passed away. When emptying and selling the house, she saw the photo and brought it back to Hamilton and asked me if I'd like it back. Elated, I said yes. And now it hangs in my hallway and brings back memories of Venice every day.
Spring break, but we're stuck in the snow in Utah. It was the Devil's Backbone Highway in the box, Death in the Box Death Hollow Wilderness, and we thought we could push through the snow. False. After digging and digging, we spent the night cold and afraid with our 2 kids. We were saved by a park ranger who saw our tracks. Never trust Gary Delp's travel advice.
Dig on Gary, I like it. I am a fly fishing guide, and on a trip one day, I lost my big guiding net in the Blackfoot River. 3 months later, I got a text from a random number saying, "I found your net. Come pick it up and bring your story." A retired military veteran who scuba dives, snorkels the Blackfoot in his spare time had found the net, tracked me down through a business card I had taped to the handle, and reached out to me. I went over to his house, shared a couple beers, and told him my story. To thank him for his kind gesture, I took him on a guided trip for free and helped him catch fish with gear he had found in the river.
In the last year, I lost my partner and the life we were building. Maybe my chance at a family. Recently, I lost my job and a community I love deeply. Then, I lost my insurance. A few other things along the way: stability, direction, trust in myself. I kept thinking I was hitting bottom, but it turned out there were a few more floors. It's been disorienting, exhausting, but now weirdly clarifying. What's mine? What matters? What do I want to carry forward? In the process of grieving, I've been finding some things that I didn't know I had been misplaced. Grit, respect for myself, a sense of humor that survived the collapse and refuses to let the bastards get me down. I'm not found, but I'm not totally lost. It's just what it looks like to keep going, to rebuild, to stay human, and I'm trusting the next steps will lead me to where I need to be.
On a remote river trip to Mexico, we had a portage of Class 6, aka Death is Certain, rapid. As we moved our boats, my paddle slid into the Class 6 rapid into a series of sieves, features where water flows in, but people tend to get stuck. Needless to say, I did not go after my paddle. I figured that paddle would never see the light of day again. But 3 months later, while visiting friends in Colorado, they placed that same paddle into my hands. Turns out they did the same route trip a week later and found it.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Aubrey. Yes. Thanks again to everybody who donated tonight, and thank you so much for your love and attention to the Storytellers. The next Tell Us Something event, like I said, is in October 7th at the Denison Theater. We have not yet selected the theme. Please subscribe to our newsletter. Check us out on all the social media channels for more information on that. Opening up the second half of our evening is Avada Being. Avada was blessed with a creative Western spirit. She was born in and has lived in Missoula for 35 of her 37 years. She is keenly aware of the vast history of all the lands we walk and is deeply grateful to walk them. She picked magical Missoula as her home after spending a year living off-grid near the Garden of the Gods in Colorado. Please welcome Avada Being.
Since I was a little girl, I knew that I liked girls. And when I thought to do this, a picture of myself came to my mind at Girl Scout camp. I'm in Pocahontas hiking boots and shorts, a flannel, and a bucket hat. It was pretty cringy, but still one of my favorite things to wear. When I was about 7th grade, I met this girl. She was throwing Skittles at me on the bus, and she became one of the dearest loves of my life. We spent 3 years together, having a blast. And early on in that time, when we were about 12, we were at a party at a friend's house. It wasn't really our age party. Her brother was throwing one. And there I met a man. And his name was, not necessary, but for the sake of the story, Brad. So at that party, he gets a camera and he interviews me about my interest in girls. And it was a very inappropriate situation. He was much older than I was, but I didn't understand where that was going to go. About 3 years later, we're 15 years old, Sarah and I, and rascally, we started drinking and really kind of becoming chaotic little messes, really, and hard to control. So this guy appears in my life again, and he offers to, take care of me, and wanted me to move in. I thought, I am a nut. I should probably take him up on this, or it's going to probably go pretty poorly for me. I moved in with him, and I thought, this is going to be fine. I'm going to have a 1950s style life, and it's just going to be, beautiful bluebirds and sunshine all the time. And it was nothing like that at all. It was very chaotic. It was violent and difficult for me to understand from my young perspective. And what was more difficult for me was that I found out over those years that he was not okay with the fact that I liked girls, which was pretty difficult for me because then I had to accept that I was going to be in this relationship forever without that opportunity to ever have that experience again. My 21st birthday came around, and all I wanted for that was to go to the strip club. And we did. It was great. I drank a ton, got to go up on the stage, and it was a blast. She invited me home. I was thinking that's what was going to happen. And I got down off the stage, and Brad says, we need to go. And I get in the car, and I was still thinking, this is great. And then I found out he did not. He did not think it was as great as I did at all. In fact, he had seen the way I looked at her and realized I would never look at him that way. And so for about a year after that, things got much worse, and I spent all that time trying to convince him that I loved him and thought he was attractive. But now I really wonder whether I was trying to convince myself of that or not. And so look at the divorce. I lost my son in that as well, and I don't go too deeply because that's its whole story in its own. But it broke me. It was hard. I was just barely 21, and I went rampant. I ended up pregnant again, and ironically or not, I had found out 2 weeks after breaking up with the guy, and we broke up because I was making out with a girl at the MMA fights. If I just learned from my lessons. So 2 years go by, I have my daughter, and there's a girl I was very interested in that time, but didn't pursue it, and then I almost dated another woman. But this man came into my life, and my daughter called her dad. And I had not had examples of how to have a female-female relationship in my life. So it didn't even seem possible to be able to introduce that. I went back into this heterosexual relationship with a guy, and I spent about 8 years with him, and because of the effects from the first relationship, he had no idea about my interest in girls. Not at all. We got married, and I felt pretty secure, so one day I thought, I'm gonna have to say something, or I'm not gonna make it. I was losing myself completely. And I did, and I asked him if he wanted to open up, and he jumped at it. He was thrilled. And that was shocking to me, and also terrifying. And I wish that maybe I had been a bit more terrified, because I spent about 2 years fielding a lot of text messages asking if it was okay that he had sent pictures to them. It was crazy. And I lost my mind. I was sad. 3 kids and a husband, second one, and I didn't have what I was realizing I needed. So 2 years go by and we meet a girl, and about 1 month in, he left me for her, which was not what I was expecting when I opened up the relationship at all. I broke completely after that. Like, I found out I was getting a divorce very suddenly, and I couldn't pull myself together. I didn't expect to lose 2 relationships. I didn't expect to have kids like scattered amongst these different homes. I lost everything that mattered to me. Everything that I thought defined who I was as a good lady. My kids, my husband, my dog, my things, all of that was gone in all of this. And that is its own long story about how it all got lost. But what I found when I lost everything was that I had covered up everything that allowed me to glow with all of these things that people said I needed to have to be able to be okay. So when I came back here to Missoula after what felt like an odyssey, but was really just a year, I ended up at the Tell Us Something event coming home. And it was very literal for me to come home to Montana, but then also to hear all these stories. It was Pride Month, and I could identify with everything that people were saying. And I spent this last year thinking about it all and thought about everything that I'd applied to myself and questioned whether it did actually apply to me, whether I agreed with the people who'd said it, whether I agreed with the statements. And I didn't. I shed it. And here I am now. And what I found was that once I lost everything, I found myself.
Thank you, Avada. I lost a bunch of note cards, so here's the backup. Next up is Gilnar Mansour. Gilnar is a person who creates spaces for all to be loved and heard in order to stop generational violence. Gilnar is the daughter of an immigrant. She is a survivor. Gilnar stands for love. Please welcome Gilnar Mansour.
Here I am in a refugee camp in Palestine with 4 other Americans. And what we're doing is we're witnessing the let up of a curfew. Curfew is something that was happening then and is still happening now. where people are not able to leave their home for hours or days at a time. At this point, I think people were on curfew for 11 or 12 days. And so we were watching people running from one direction to the other, trying to exchange goods. There were no new resources in the area often, and at that time, ever. So this would be like someone running to the next village to exchange rice for flour that had not been peed on by the Israeli Defense Force or the IDF. So we have people in different villages, and we're witnessing this chaos. And all we hear next is, Yahayawin, Yahayawin. And the soldiers are screaming, you animals, you animals. They're going to stop the curfew. It's only been a matter of an hour. So there's been a security breach, and now the soldiers want people to go in to whatever home, a stranger's home. And they're being called animals. So quickly, in advance of this trip, we had done some affinity training. This was the Michigan Peace Team. They had recruited me to travel to Palestine after seeing me speak about the conflict there for so many years, putting on human rights conferences at law schools. And I thought they were wild for recruiting me. I had spent time in southern Lebanon a year and a half under occupation by the Israeli Defense Force, and the odds were differently against me traveling in this manner. But I definitely thought it was time for me to see what it was I spoke about and what I studied about. So I decided to go, and here I am. We also had done this affinity training on how to make quick decisions in tricky situations. So I huddled the people together, and I said, we got to get the women and children home, back to their village. Everybody quickly said, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. And one guy that had recruited me the hardest and thought that there'd be some rom-com love story of him having me in his life and traveling to Palestine with a Middle Eastern woman. So he was kind of against it. He wasn't in charge and whatever. Democratically, I won. And this is the story about me creating a checkpoint in the land that they call Israel or Palestine. I quickly turned and found a woman of beauty and knew that I needed her help. And so I grabbed this woman with long red hair from Brooklyn and said, come with me, and she came with me. And as we walked over towards a soldier, I asked her to ask the soldier who made his breakfast. And she did. And he conveniently answered his truth, which was that his mother made his breakfast. It was easy to slip into a space of vulnerability and humanity with him. And in that conversation, he let us know that him and most of his friends pray each morning that they'll never have to use their gun. You see, in Israel, men and women are conscribed to 3 years of military service, and during that time, they must carry their artillery. It was an interesting fact. So he was ready to help negotiate something that was less than violent. So now we have lines of women and children on both sides of this file of soldiers, and they're checking paperwork, and well, I got my way, but I created a checkpoint. So the women and children got home, presuming something didn't happen to them on the way home. This was during the second Intifada, or the second uprising, 25 years ago. One of the other things that I did on this trip was, and many of the volunteers, we held our passports outside of ambulances for the UPMRC, or the Red Crescent or Red Cross, in order for the ambulances to be able to get to the homes to help people. Turns out when you're locked in your home, a lot of babies are made or domestic violence happens. So we would protect the ambulances and make sure they could get back to the clinic to care for people with our American passports. It was something we were hoping would create safety. So I helped babies be born, essentially. And I look back on that experience. And I know in both situations where I created a checkpoint and helped babies get born, I had the best of intention. And there's a part of my life dedicated to studying impact over intention. In many ways, I think that maybe our actions are not responsible unless we know how it impacts ourselves, others, and the whole. But I know that those babies are 25 years old now and able to see themselves or their loved ones be blown up. I don't know what is right or what if I did was right. I do know what I saw. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonar. Before I introduce our next storyteller, I got a text. I try not to check my phone during the events, but if I'm getting a text, most people know that I'm here. And the text is that this last call for alcohol came from the paddleheads. So, next up is Steve Schmidt, also known as Schmitty. Starting from his small town origins in Malta, Montana, Schmitty is dedicated to positive change. With 8 years' experience as a police officer in Kansas City, Schmitty has developed strong skills in law enforcement and community engagement, all while connecting with thousands of fans as a professional mascot. Now based here in Missoula, Schmitty leads Drive Safe Missoula, a traffic safety initiative within Missoula Public Health that's focused on saving lives through education. His expertise extends nationally, where he speaks on influencing behavior and leveraging AI for road safety and public health. Please welcome Steve Schmidt.
It was 1997, and I was driving my car in South Kansas City when my radio began to speak to me. 544. 544 from Bannister and Hillcrest, go ahead. 544, respond to the area of 106th and Walrand on a reported recovered property call. Now, I was a very, very young police officer. In fact, 2 years prior to this call, I graduated from the Kansas City, Missouri Police Academy 9 days after turning 21 years old. I looked like I was about 15 and a half years old and that I was just wearing a really authentic looking police Halloween costume. So I respond to the area of 106 and Walrand, where I'm greeted by a family, and we go through the typical, you don't look old enough to be a cop thing. They hand me over a duffel bag that they had found at the edge of their property that they thought might have been involved with a purse snatching in the area. I look through the contents of this duffel bag, and one thing stands out, and that's an envelope with a name and address on it. So I check with dispatch, and I see if there's been any burglaries at that particular residence in the last 30 days or so. They said there hasn't been, so I said, hold me out at that address, let me check with the homeowner. So I drive about 3 or 4 blocks away to this split-level home where the main living residence is all on one level and the bedrooms are above the garages. And I walk up to this house, and I notice that the deadbolt is still in the locked position, and the door frame is splintered in towards the inside of the residence, meaning the door has been kicked in and it's been recently burglarized. So I call for a second car because we're going to have to go inside and search this residence for any burglars that might be left inside. So I call for my second officer, and he shows up, and we do a procedure called holding the air, which means we have priority for any radio traffic on that particular frequency. In case there's an extreme emergency on the inside, all the other officers know that we're searching this house, and it's really important and pretty dangerous. So my officer partner shows up. We walk up to the front door, and we open the door, and we yell, "Police, is there anybody here?" And I don't hear any answer. We do a search of the main living area of the house, and I don't see any signs of burglary whatsoever. I'm quite confused. The fact that the VCR is still there, because back in 1997, VCRs were probably one of the most common things stolen from burglaries. We still have the upstairs to search, so I begin to make my way up the flight of stairs, and I see a bedroom on my right-hand side, I see a bedroom straight ahead, and I see another doorway on the left. I peek into the first room, and I see a suspect laying face down on the bed, sleeping. The first signs of burglary I see are directly behind this individual, where a dresser drawer is pulled out and sort of cockeyed a bit, and there's some clothes thrown about. I take position on the left side of the doorway. My partner fills in the position of the right side of the doorway, and we fill this space. Naturally, our guns are drawn because we're searching this residence, and I yell, "Sir!" He wakes up, gets up on his hands and knees, deer in the headlight look, looking at me. "Do you live here?" "Yes." I don't really like the way he answered that question, so I ask it again. "Do you live here?" "No." "Okay, we need you to get down off the bed now. Get down off the bed." He hops off the back side of the bed, and he's holding a t-shirt in his hand. And he starts to say, "I need to go outside. I need to go outside. I need to go outside." He walks to the end of the bed, and pretty much the width of a queen-size bed is all that separates us. And if you imagine a running back on the 1 yard line with 1 second left in the fourth quarter, and they're given the ball trying to score that touchdown, this guy charges us. We both have our handguns out. I know that in order for him to reach out and grab my handgun, he has to drop this t-shirt first. As he hits us, both my partner and I holster up simultaneously, and we hit the back wall. We drop to the ground, and he starts pushing and kicking. "I need to go outside. I need to go outside." I'm on the radio, "Assist, assist, assist." And I have visions of Top Gun in my head going, "Eject, eject, eject," because all I want to do is get out of there. We fall down the flight of stairs. I'm on top of the suspect. The suspect's on top of my partner. We land at the base of the stairs. Glass is breaking from a nearby coffee table. I'm trying to get this individual's hands behind his back, and I am just not strong enough. My little 15-and-a-half-year-old sized body just isn't going to do it. I let go of his left arm. I get a handcuff on his right arm, and I just yell, "Relax!" And he just magically goes limp, and I get the handcuffs on. I get on the radio, 544, we got one party in custody. The house is still hot. Keep the officers coming. Because when I yell assist, assist, assist on the radio, all the officers in the area drop everything they're doing, and they come rushing to our aid. I run back upstairs to search the other rooms that are upstairs, and this is where I see most of the evidence from the burglary. Nobody else is in the house. I clear the air, I go downstairs, I said, "We have one party in custody, start me an ambulance," because this individual sustained a small cut on his arm from the fall. I begin to try to investigate who this guy is, and I'm asking him all these different questions, and he's not telling me his name in any way, shape, or form. And in fact, all he keeps saying to me is, "Put your socks on, put your socks on." And I'm like, "Thanks, man, I appreciate it." As he's sitting on the floor, I'm like, "Thanks, I appreciate it, I got my socks on." And I go, are you on drugs? And he's like, "Yes." And I'm like, okay, that was probably one of the dumbest questions I've ever asked anybody. Like, I knew he was on drugs. And I wish I remembered the exact line of questioning I had for this individual, because one thing led to another as I was trying to figure out who he was. And I asked him, "What's your mom's name?" And he goes, Teresa Williams. And I freeze. My partner looks at me and is like, what's wrong? I'm like, dude, Teresa Williams. That's the name that was on the envelope in the duffel bag 4 blocks away that brought me here. This guy lives here. And he's not on drugs. I don't know about you, but this is the closest I've ever come to shooting somebody. And my partner goes, if you would have shot, I would have shot. I go into the kitchen, I look through some paperwork, and I find some information about who his parents are. I get a hold of his dad, who's a principal of a local high school in Kansas City. And I call him and I say, there's been an incident here at the house. You need to come here. Your son's okay. We already had an ambulance for the son, and he was in the back of the ambulance being taken care of. Dad gets there, and I'm explaining everything that happened that led to me being in his house. And I'm to the point to where we were walking up the steps. I peeked inside, and I saw him sleeping in the bed. And I asked him, I was like, sir, do you live here? And he said, yes. And I said, I didn't like the way he said that. So I asked him again, sir, do you live here? And he said, no. And he goes, hold on a second. Let me tell you a little bit about my son. My son is 33 years old, and he has autism. He gets dropped off by a cab every single day. He has a garage door opener in his backpack, and he enters the house through the garage door. He goes into the kitchen, he makes himself a sandwich, and then he goes upstairs and lays down in one of the 3 bedrooms and goes to sleep until we get home. If you ask my son a yes-no question, he will always respond with yes. If you ask him that question again, he assumes the only reason why you're asking him that question a second time is he must have got the first one wrong, so he's going to answer no. So do you live here? Yes. Do you live here? No. And I'm thinking, how are we supposed to figure this out when I have a burglary suspect in front of me? Not pulling the trigger that day was the best decision I've ever made in my entire life. If I would have harmed that guy, I would not be here today. The headline in the newspaper across the country the next day would have been 2 white officers shoot an unarmed autistic black man in his own home. And I would not have been able to live with that. It's been 28 years, and I think about this guy often. I have so much love for him and his family, and I hope life has been kind to him. And if he was here today, I would just want to say, I'm sorry I scared you.
Thanks, Schmitty. Closing out our evening tonight is Lauren Tobias. When Lauren moved to Montana from the suburbs of New York City 9 years ago in search of some peace and quiet, she never could have expected she'd be making home here. She loved visiting the many nooks and crannies of Montana via highways, gravel tire track roads, hiking trails, bike paths, and her favorite, an 8-seater plane. During her time here, she's been called to infinitely learn, from how to recognize what's under the hood of her car, to self-expression through photography, to embracing a queer identity, to picking up beer league ice hockey in her 30s. Those last 2 things are related only by pure coincidence, she assures me. Lauren has found more life here than she could have ever imagined. She spent COVID living on the Fort Peck Indian Reservation, learning a more holistic history of our country and about the incredible culture and decolonization efforts of indigenous nations. Lauren prefers spending time among a disproportionate ratio of 4-legged creatures, and tonight we'll be taking you on the emotional roller coaster of the story of her soul dog. Please welcome Lauren Tobias.
I never thought I'd have a dog. It's not that I don't love dogs, obviously. It's that I just like the guilt of, anyone who's a dog owner knows, the guilt of just like watching them stare at you in your house. It was just like too much for me. So when I moved to the Fort Peck reservation in 2018, late 2018, my perspective on dog relationship kind of got blown out of the water. Anyone who maybe who's listening in the audience might know, the relationship that people have with dogs there is just very symbiotic, and people consider them members of the community. From the outside eye, it might look like they are just like don't have homes, but actually like people take care of them, and they're meaningful parts of the community. And so when I met many dogs while I was living there, I spent about 4 years, and this one particular dog stood out to me. She was a big, poofy, white, fluffy dog, and she had a slap-happy personality. I would see her on the streets with like this pack, this like miscellaneous pack of dogs, and every time she saw me, she would like jump on me and like greet me, and we had this like developing relationship over the course of months. And she would do this thing where I swear she like knew that she could make people laugh. Direct eye contact, and like a foot-long tongue just like hanging out of her mouth. And she would like dip her shoulder, butt would just flop down to the floor like a seal's tail, and then she would just like get on her belly, ask for belly rubs, and she would just like still be making eye contact with you. And so that's how I like met her. And eventually she kind of started following me like in town, and we sort of developed a courtship. And after a couple months, decided to make it official, which meant that I got her vaccinated and slapped a collar on her. And a week later, she told me that she was pregnant. And I was not the father. And so that was our first experience together. So my whole thing about the guilt and the dogs, we had this very fluid relationship, and we never went there, just for the record. So we had this like come and go. She would just sort of like sit on my porch all day, and she would kind of like knock on the door. She wanted to come in the house. She'd knock on the door. She wanted to leave. She'd wander around all day. So it was kind of perfect. Like we just had developed trust, and then through like the raising of her babies, like we developed even more of like this really natural, beautiful trust. And she was like my best friend. It sounds really cliche, but it was true. Everyone in town that knew me knew that she was my dog. And so, yeah, we spent probably about a year that she was kind of like with me. And so because of the nature of our relationship, when she didn't show up home one night, I didn't really think very much of it. And then 2 nights went by, and I was like, she's done this before. It's probably no big deal. 4 nights go by, and I'm like, okay, like I let her out of the house without a collar on, because I like didn't always put a collar on her when she was leaving the house, because we would just kind of come in and out. And so I was like, she probably got lost. And I hung up posters all over Wolf Point. Those of you who know Wolf Point probably like didn't take that long to cover the town. It's a pretty small town, but on the 6th day, I got a phone call, and it was there were 3 kids on the other line, and they were calling from the Wolf Point pizza joint, like the dial phone there. And they were like, I was like, hello? They were like, all they said was, "We found your dog." I was like, oh my God, like, where can I come get her? Like, yes, thank you so much. Like, I'll be right there. And I was just met with silence on the other line. And this was like literally the first time throughout the entire 6 days where I was like maybe something's wrong. Like maybe something happened to her. I never considered it. She grew up around cars and she was always really good around, cars and stuff. So I never thought that was like a possibility. So I run across town, I drive across town, I pick them up, and I'd ask them to show me where she was. And when we start walking up to the train tracks, I was like, oh my God, like, no way. So I walk up and I see her body deflated and lifeless and just like formed to the rails of the track. And yeah, sorry, that was really graphic. So the kids are still with me, and they're like, this is the most interesting thing that's happened to us all day. We just located your dead dog off of a missing poster sign, so we're like here for this. And I was like, can you please leave me for a second? And so they did, and they left me for like 10 minutes. And then I saw them circling back, and I was like, okay, I think we're in this. And I'm like, okay, if I'm remembering myself as a child, and I had done that, like sleuthing, like I'd probably be pretty invested too. So I was like, all right, you can come with me. And they were like, what are you gonna do? I'm like, I don't know, do you have any ideas? Never been in this situation before. So they came with me. I went back to my house. I grabbed a bathrobe, went back to the train tracks. I wrapped her up, 65 pounds, picked her up, put her in my trunk. Did the only thing I could think to, thank the kids. Went to the McDonald's drive-thru, dog's still in the back of my trunk. And then I took them home, and I go home, and now I'm like alone for the first time, making phone calls. And I'm getting text messages from people I didn't even tell, sending their condolences. And I made an appointment the next morning with the Wolf Point Crematorium. They said they'd make an exception and cremate a dog the next day. So my friends who lived downstairs, 3 friends came upstairs. They were devastated because they loved her too. They knew her spirit. And we had probably the most beautiful funeral and ceremony that I've ever been to. We took her body out of the trunk. We put it on her bed outside in this kind of mud room. And we put her toys around her treats, sweetgrass sage. They kind of burned sage, and we were drinking whiskey, laughing, crying. And there was also this moment I wanted to stamp her paw print. I was like, which arm am I going to get tattooed? I wanted to stamp her paw print on something sentimental. The closest thing I could find was my ukulele. I can't get into that side quest right now, but basically it was some pube trimmers, a nail polish, navy blue nail polish, and my friend's CSI knowledge about rolling it, which was not intuitive at all. It was a mess, but it gave us the first belly laugh of the 24 hours. And so I went to bed, got a really terrible night's sleep, and I wake up the next morning. I'm flipping pancakes. I'm still crying, and it's the first thing I've eaten since the McDonald's the day before at 3 p.m. And I get a text message on my phone, and I see a picture. Someone forwards me a Facebook post, and I see a picture of my dog. I know I've lost credibility of saying this, but it was her, the picture. I'm like, why is someone sending me this? I look at the caption, and it says, anyone know whose sweet dog this is? She showed up on my porch today. I look at the timestamp, it was yesterday, so I'm like, maybe it's an old picture, I don't know. And so I message her, find her address, and then my friend Mush from the night before the funeral comes banging on my door and is like, have you seen this text message? She just got it forwarded too. And so I'm like, shut the fuck up. I don't know. Please don't get my hopes up. We drive. So I'd make her get in the car with me. We drive 6 miles to get to this person's house. And we open the door. Out comes running my actual dog. This is Fluffer. She's 7 years old now, and we're a pet therapy team. Yeah. And so nothing happened. She was just pumped. She was like, wow, haven't seen you in a week. Like, what's up? Like, I've been through a lot. Like, whew. She didn't look like she lost weight because she just, she's chilling. She probably made some friends. So anyway, the denouement of this story is that I still have the dog in my closet, Yeah. So the appointment to get her cremated was like in an hour. And so I did the best thing I could do. I took real Fluffer in the broad daylight. It was April, so the ground was really hard. I tried, I promise, I did my best. I know this is not environmentally friendly, but I took the bathrobe, the dog, dug a shallow grave in the hills of Wolf Point. And yeah, that was it. And then I invited the kids to come on an adventure with Fluffy and I. And they got to meet her and hear the things I was telling about. And yeah, now we're just living life. And that's my story of lost and found. So thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Storytellers are coming down. Thank you all so much for being here tonight to support your community by listening to stories. Thank you to everyone who has donated. Thank you to especially all of our storytellers tonight. Hammy, Katie Van Dorn, Karna Sunby, Kara Adolfson, Avada Being, Gilnar Mansour, Steve Schmitty Schmidt, and Lauren Tobias.